Does just one pill magically make a difference to your orchids? Well, we've done an experiment and we have some results to show you. This actually might just have worked. And welcome to the Nature Company. Today we're going to be looking at thiamine, vitamin B1, and looking at how we can make a homemade solution of vitamin B1 to treat our orchids. And we'll be showing you the results of our trials that we had done on our little kikis that we had taken off one of our Phalaenopsis and show you the difference. We'll also be showing you what sort of concentrations to mix this at and give you the scientific proof behind all of this. So if this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Before we look at the results, let's take a look at the one that wasn't treated with thiamine and what perhaps, or not what perhaps, how we can now treat this to ensure that we get good root growth on this so that we can get a nice healthy plant. Here we can see that this poor little guy is a little bit dehydrated. He's a bit lacking in root volume, and actually I can just quite easily remove him from his media and we can have a closer look at him. Now we can see some of the roots that had started to grow have dried up and died off, and his leaves are very dehydrated. So he's just battling along trying to keep himself alive. So he really does need a good solid treatment of something to help him overcome the stress that he's under. So before we do that, let's just clean him up. Let's just take some sterilized secateurs and just clean off these old dried roots. And then I'll just remove these old leaf sheaths. This just makes it slightly easier or gives less of a barrier for new root growth to push its way through. And at the moment I'm not going to do much more than that because I don't want to put any further stress on this plant. I don't want to give him a wound that I'm going to have to treat. So I'll just leave him like that, and then we can look at how thiamine is going to change the whole story of this poor baby's life. Now he just has to wait to be treated. How do we go about making thiamine solution or a vitamin B solution to treat our plant, and what is it going to do to the plant? First of all, let's just go through how we mix up a solution that's going to be right for our orchids. Thiamine tablets or vitamin B as you buy them in the shop is generally going to be in 3 different forms. One of the form is one of the ones that you cannot use on your orchids, but we'll get to that a bit later. And generally you're going to be getting them in 500 milligram and 100 milligram tablets. So this is all going to affect how much of the tablet you're going to need to use if you are mixing in a liter of water, because there are specific concentrations of this vitamin B1 that is going to affect your orchid. And we have to make sure that we get those concentrations correct. Yeah, this is a 100 milligram vitamin B tablet. And what we're going to need to do is we want a 2 milligram per liter solution. So with this being 100 milligrams, we're going to have to basically divide this pill into 50 sections. So it's going to be easier if we divide it in half first. So let's just cut that tablet in half, and then we can cut that half in half again. So that's from 1:50 to 1:25, and now we have 1:12.5. So, and then if we're able to cut that again, then the balance here we'll crush, We'll put into our mortar and pestle and just make sure we get a nice little powder out of it. Yeah, we have our powder at the bottom of the mortar, and we can see this is going to be impossible to divide now into 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some water to it. This is where the tricky part comes, is we're going to have to add a specific amount of water that we can then use as a concentrate to then dilute further. So I'm sitting with about 6 milligrams of thiamine powder in my mortar now, and I need only 2 milligrams because I'm looking for a 2 milligram solution in my 1 liter of water. So here we now add 60 mils of water to it. So basically 10 mils for each milligram. So about 2.5 tablespoons. This should preferably be lukewarm water. This is going to help the thiamine dissolve more easily because it is highly water soluble as it is. But just to ensure, depending on the type of thiamine it is, just that lukewarm water makes it dissolve faster. Just a little bit of agitation. You may still see some of the powder that's sitting at the bottom of your mortar and pestle, but that's just powder. That's just the carrying agent for the dissolvable thiamine. Okay, there we go. We have our 60 mils of now vitamin B water. And I'm going to need 20 mils for my liter of water. So I'm just going to take as close an average as possible. If you want to be more accurate, you can use a syringe or some little measurement cup. But we're just going to get as close as possible. We'll just make sure our tablespoon isn't completely full. Or of course we can try and remove a teaspoon of water out of the tablespoon. There we go. So we're going to put that into the water and give that a stir. So here now we have approximately 2 mils of vitamin B in our entire liter of water. And this is the concentration that we really want to work with when our orchid is under as much stress as this. You can give lower quantities or lower concentrations. A lower concentration of about 0.5 or 0.9 is good for just general all-round tonic for your plant, which you're going to be feeding it during its growing season. And it just helps keep that active growth going. If you're looking at slightly higher concentrations of about 1 milligram to or 1 milliliter to 1.5 mils, then this is generally for orchids that you've done some repotting with or have a little bit of stress under, whether it's environmental stress or dehydration stress, that you just want to give them that little bit of a boost, and it's going to help a little bit with that elongation of the growth and give you slightly more root volume. It's especially good for young plants, for seedlings and that you're wanting to give that boost to help them grow faster. And then of course you have this higher concentration, this 2 mils per liter, which is probably the highest concentration I would use vitamin B at, although it's not really toxic to your plants if your concentrations are higher, because it does degrade quickly through microorganisms and that into completely harmless compounds afterwards. And that happens very quickly, especially once it's been poured into your media or to the open air. And this concentration is really going to boost your vegetative growth. It's going to really elongate and increase the size of those leaves. It's going to increase your root volume and their vigor. And it's generally only ideal to use this when your plant is during the active growth phase. It's also best to use this sort of concentration when your plant is looking really sad and it really needs that help to boost its energy levels. So what does thiamine do in your orchid? So for one, it is used in the systemic acquired resistance, the SAR of your orchid. It's used as a signaling element or compound to trigger defense pathways to help your plant resist those attacks from insects and other pathogens. It's also involved in the defense activation. So it helps produce those molecules inside the plant that help the plant to react under those stress conditions, such as dehydration and that this poor plant is undergoing. That's going to help it overcome the stresses involved. And it's also involved in the energy production pathways, those ATP pathways to provide energy for your plant, and that's what it needs during these times of stress. It needs the energy for cell reproduction. So we need to be able to give it all the energy it needs so it can recover well. Now that we have this poor little plant, how are we going to treat it with our vitamin B water? Well, to start off with, often the best way to do it as an initial treatment is just take your poor little plant, put it in a little container, and with all of this vitamin B water you've got, just give it a good dousing. We'll make sure the entire plant has been made wet by this mixture. And what we'll do is we'll just let it stand in this for about 5, 10, 15 minutes. I generally don't like to do it much longer than that because you can start putting aeration stress on your roots. And we want to avoid as much stress as possible, especially at this point. So after we've given it a good soaking, we want to repot this into a nice breathable mix. And just a nice little careful repot. Some people like to do this initial repot, especially if your orchid is rootless, into a sphagnum moss media. But this already had a few little roots left on it, and I tend to overwater, and sphagnum moss holds a huge amount of water, so I generally drown mine in sphagnum moss. But there's something involved with the sphagnum moss that helps initiate the start of root growth. Now let's have a look at the difference between our two test subjects. The one already that we've seen that was untreated from the get-go to the one that we had started treating right from as we removed it off the plant, and we can see all this root growth, nice firm leaves, slightly bigger and more vigorous leaves growing, and by far more root growth. So that just indicates to you how much more effective it is starting off a plant, especially seedlings or young plants, using a vitamin B thiamine supplement. So you can just use those over-the-counter vitamin B. Remember, vitamin B1, it needs to be thiamine hydrochloride or thiamine mononitrate. Those are often found available in the stores, but you can also get for human consumption or for animal consumption, it's called benfotianate. This is a synthetic vitamin B, which in animal bodies is broken down into thiamine, but your plants or the media is not going to be able to break it down into the same form that is going to be usable by the plant. So either use thiamine mononitrate or thiamine hydrochloride. These are both easily water soluble, as I've said before, and they're also relatively stable. So if you're worried about how long your vitamin water is going to last, if you're keeping it out, if you've pre-mixed it, your water is going to last for about 1 week. You can keep it for up to 1 month if you're refrigerating it, and it will last longer that way. Remember, keep it in an airtight container because it will break down into other compounds when it comes in contact with the air or oxygen. And also, of course, with most products, keep it out of light. Light can also cause the compounds to break down into forms that are either going to be unusable or worthless when you do use them. So refrigerate, keep it in a dark area, and keep it cool and airtight, sorry. So that's the way you're going to be able to store it the longest. Also, if you're worried about your pills that you have now chopped up and you don't want to waste them, you can either pop them yourself, or these will last for about 3 months before the compounds start degrading. And here with the 2 of these, you can see they're in exactly the same media. They were treated exactly the same way, except this one got the thiamine, the vitamin B. And none of them were exposed to sphagnum in any way at any point. So you can see your orchid can root far better using vitamin B than any other way. If you're too lazy to do this yourself, then there is a product available that does have thiamine in it. It's called Super Thrive. We do have it available in our Amazon link down below, and this isn't a paid promotion, but it's just one of the products that does have vitamin B1 available in it. And vitamin B1 is not a long-term treatment. So this plant has already been weaned off it, and this one is just being started on it. So you're only doing it specifically in those growth seasons. If your plant is not actively growing, it's no point in using it. Also, we're only going to be using it for short periods to give it that boost in metabolic activity. We don't want to use it long term. So perhaps 2 or 3 applications of it over a period of time is basically all your plant really needs to get it set off properly. But if you're using something like Super Thrive, where the concentrations of vitamin B1 is a lot lower, perhaps you can use that as a long-term feed. It has nutrients and it has kelp extract in it, so it can possibly be a good long-term feed for your orchid as well. So for further treatments of this one, how are we going to do it? We've got to have given it a good soaking, and then thereafter what we're going to be doing is taking our spray bottle and just filling that up. With this, you can actually add it to your feeds or to any other plant growth activators that you like to use, like Atonic. You can use that with your vitamin B12 because there's no interactions between them, and then you can just give your plant a good foliar feed with it and give it a good spray in and around that root volume. So this you're going to be doing a maximum every 2 weeks, just for a short period of time. And if you'd like us to do full videos on Super Thrive and Atonic, drop a comment down below and we'll see if there's any interest in that. If you have any other orchid related queries or insights, also drop them down there, and be sure to check out that Buy Me a Coffee link. Ed posts orchid information up there all the time for everyone. And if you found any of our information helpful in your orchid journey and would like to show appreciation, you can buy us a coffee down there too. Don't be shy, sign up, become a member, and grow like a pro. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.